Mailbag time. I have all but recovered from the tragedy of early November in which my computer said, yeah, everything that you've done YouTube-wise, all your memory that you didn't back up because you're an idiot, yeah, that's going by. Goodbye. Memory wiped clean, and I had to recreate everything. So I did that pretty quickly, but a problem I've been running into is I could not figure out how to get my editing software downloaded to make videos. So I didn't fix the problem, but now my editing software is downloaded. It doesn't make much sense. I'm not that computer literate. But basically, I've finally got my editing software re-downloaded, so that means videos coming up. This mailbag right here is one of them. And that also means that I'll be able to get our stream audio back onto Spotify. Anyway, it's been a while since I've done one of these, and I felt like this was probably the right time to do a mailbag. The Blazers have won 3 in a row, so I felt like, maybe we won't get a bunch of negative questions about how the team should blow it up and trade this guy and trade that guy. So one thing that I forgot to say when I posted the mailbag question prompt was I'm not looking for trade questions. I'm looking for mailbag questions. I said I won't talk trades until 20 games in. We're at about 17, I think. So because I didn't say no trade questions, I will answer a couple trade questions. I forgot to put that in the prompt. But we will have Trade Talk Tuesday videos coming up semi-regularly starting around the end of November, around a week from now. So if you guys want Trade Talk, we're not that far away. But I will give you guys an early teaser because I forgot to say no trades. With that being said, let's jump into the questions. We got about 15 to go through here. Nave asks, how would you feel about finding a way to trade Rocco for Thad Young, most likely a 3-team trade? I think Thad would fit great on the bench as we'd be able to move Larry Nance Jr. to the starting lineup. And I'm not super high on that. The Blazers haven't utilized their playmaking bigs well enough. And that's one of Thaddeus Young's strengths, as he's a really good passer and playmaker at the 4/5 spot. We haven't utilized that super well, so I'm not sure that bringing him in over Rocco would really be much of a difference maker in the playmaking department when Jusuf Nurkic isn't being used as a passer as much as he should be, and even Larry Nance Jr. isn't being used that way as much as he should be. Thad Young's a good defender. He's a solid player. He can attack the rim off the dribble a little bit. The problem is he can't shoot threes. He's really struggled the past couple of years with that. So in terms of a piece that fits next to Dame, fits next to CJ playing some minutes with the starting lineup, I don't really like that. And at this point, I'm not sure that makes the team better by taking Larry Nance Jr. off the bench, replacing him with Thad Young, and taking Rocco out of the lineup. I don't think that's really what we should be going for if we're really trying to make the team better. It's kind of just shuffling the chairs on the deck without changing much. Chip Z says, what are the chances we resign our players this offseason? Nurkic, Rocco, and Simons in particular. And I think if Simons is on the team past the trade deadline, he's not getting traded. He'll be a restricted free agent, which means we can match any offer he gets. For Nurkic and Rocco, it's more up in the air. It depends on how the rest of the season goes for Nurkic. Obviously, he wants to be utilized a little bit better, but I don't think he's going to find a situation out there where he's utilized more than he is being utilized here. So I don't think he's necessarily going to leave over utilization issues. And he's a guy that I still don't know what his value is. And obviously, if he crushes it the rest of the season, there might be a lot more suitors out there for him than us. But we will be able to re-sign him to any contract. So if we have to overpay him a little bit, who knows what that might look like. But we may elect to do that instead of losing our starting center for nothing. And that the same thing goes for Rocco. Rocco and Nurkic are kind of in the same boat, in my opinion. Sude says, what do you think we could get with a possible Anthony Rocco package? And if you trade Anthony and Rocco, you can bring back approximately $20 million. It might be a little bit less, might be a little bit more, but the only player that I could see being gettable for that would make some sense is maybe Jeremy Grant. Detroit is rebuilding, and they could use a guard like an Anthony Simons, and then maybe Rocco goes to a third team and they get a first-round pick as well. I don't know if that's enough for Jeremy Grant. There's a good chance that they don't elect to move him even if they get a good trade offer, but that's kind of the one guy that I would look out for that possible package. Zachary Brem says, is Dame finally back? I mean, he never left. He just was in a shooting slump, and that happens to the best of them. Because it was at the start of the season, it was a little bit more pronounced, and he's still not having super good three-point shooting nights. He had that 39-point game last game, but did it on 3 for 13 from the three-point line, which is about 38%. So that's not great by his standards, but he's definitely rounding back into form right now. Subleaf Gaming asks, do you think Tony Snell gets brought back to Portland after his contract is up? And I don't think he'll be back in Portland just because 1 year vet minimum guys normally don't return to Portland. The only exception is Carmelo Anthony, who spent 2 years here. But like you look at Enes Kanter, and we had him on a 1 year vet minimum twice and let him walk the following season. Ironically, he went to Boston both times. And you look at guys like Anthony Tolliver, Nick Stauskas, Mario Hezonja. We don't keep 1 year guys. Harry Giles walked this past offseason. He's another example. So just because of past precedent, I don't expect Tony Snell to be back, but I could be wrong. I mean, he's a vet minimum guy. Who knows? Reese Cooley asks, what does this team lack? And this is a good question. Appreciate Reese for asking this one. I've said this time and time again. I feel like they may be missing a guy who will bring some fire to the court, bring some attitude. I feel like they might be lacking in terms of having like a Draymond Green personality, right? And as opposing fans, Draymond Green usually will drive you insane, but that's the type of guy you love to have on your team, and sometimes you need a guy that'll be fiery and light a spark for the team. If the team is coming into a game with a little energy, he can kind of set the tone from an attitude and pride and energy standpoint. And obviously Draymond would be a good player to have for his defense and his playmaking ability. I don't think he's gettable, so in terms of trade targets that we'll discuss in the future, I'm not going to sit here and be coming up with Draymond Green trades, especially when Golden State is sitting at like 14-2. I just feel like we might need that personality. We don't have a personality like that, and I feel like a lot of good teams end up having a guy like that. I feel like that guy last year for the champion Milwaukee Bucks was PJ Tucker. Just that hard-nosed defensive player that brings it night in, night out, and sets the tone from an energy standpoint. Other than that, I think talent-wise, this team is solid. The only other thing that they may be missing is like a good, lengthy, as you love to say, Reese, point of attack defender. I know that's one of your favorite terms. I don't disagree with the people that say we need a better point of attacker, on-ball defender to throw up against the Paul Georges and the LeBron Jameses of the world. But I think we have enough guys that can do a good enough job. I liked how Larry Nance Jr. has defended on the ball against solid players so far this year. I think Nasir Little has done a good job on the ball as well, and he's been playing some crunch time minutes, and he can be that stopper down the stretch, in my opinion. You're not going to stop any of the superstars of the league. You're not going to stop Paul George. Even if you put a Matisse Thybulle or Ben Simmons up against a Paul George or LeBron James, they're not going to be able to stop them. You have to have good help behind those guys because they're so supremely offensively talented. So when it comes to stopping superstars, a lot of people just focus on, oh, who do you put on him? But I think it's as much as the help coming in time, is the help there, is the help cutting off the drive, and then when, LeBron kicks out, are we rotating out to the shooter and not letting that become an open three? I think team defense matters as much, if not more, than who you put up against a star caliber player. But it doesn't hurt having a guy who can lock things up on the ball and kind of limit the damage that player is able to do off the dribble. So that might be something else we're lacking right now. MK says, are you in the trade CJ camp right now? If so, who do you hope to receive? I've been on board for Pascal Siakam all offseason long, so that's still a guy I like. I wouldn't say I'm not in the trade CJ camp, but I'm definitely not in it. I would trade CJ for the right deal. A lot of people would trade CJ for anything. I would just trade him for the right deal if it comes along, and I'm not against that. I just fight back at all the dumb trade ideas that are like, let's trade CJ in a first-round pick for Aaron Gordon, and he'll fix all our problems. I've never understood that. So I haven't been that heavily invested in being in the trade CJ camp like some other people have been, but I would still trade him for the right deal. Sherwin Ignacio says, if a change in the starting lineup occurs, who do you see starting at the 4? Nas, Nance, or Rocco? I don't think a change occurs, so I think it stays Rocco, but if a change occurs, I think it would be Nance, and I want to see more Nance and Nurkic combinations because I think that would be a good 4-5 combo. Nance is better at the 5 though with this team, so that's why I don't think the starting lineup gets changed, because then you would have to slot him at the 4. The other option that you put out here is Nas, but he's undersized at the 4 more so than Nance or Roko, so I don't know if we'd want to go that small with the 3 guards and then playing Nas at the 4, and then you kind of eat into Roko's or Nance's minutes at that position potentially. So I think they stay the same, and if there's a change, it would be Larry Nance Jr. starting at the 4. Alex Wolf says, if John Wall were to get bought out, hypothetically, which teams do you think should pursue him? I personally think Miami and the Clippers would be good fits. Thanks. And I think the Clippers would be a solid fit. They need some guard help. Right now, they got Eric Bledsoe playing heavy minutes, and I still think John Wall is better than Eric Bledsoe, and kind of, I wouldn't say a similar player, but they have similar weaknesses, so to say. They struggle with their outside shots. That's the main weakness for both those guys. So they could use another playmaker, especially without Kawhi Leonard. So the Clippers would be a good fit. Miami, I don't think needs them. They brought in Kyle Lowry. They got Victor Oladipo. They're waiting for him to get healthy. Hopefully, he'll finally be able to play consistent minutes once again. So I don't think Miami is necessarily a great fit. And a lot of teams have really good point guards and don't necessarily need a John Wall. I think he'd be a solid fit, maybe as a third guard off the bench for a number of teams. But for a starting role, I think he makes sense for the Clippers more so than any other playoff team. Zach Glandia says, so far, who do you think has been the best coach on their first year with a new team? And I would say Wes Unseld Jr. with the Washington Wizards. They have taken everybody by surprise this year. They have been right at the top of the Eastern Conference, and that roster I don't think is too great. You got some solid role players there now. I think that Westbrook trade was an absolute win for the Washington Wizards, so I think they actually got a little bit better this past offseason, but that's still not a team that should be at the top of the East. So I've been very surprised and impressed with what Washington is doing. We have to remain, and we have to see if that's a fluke or not. That might be a fluke. It might just be a hot stretch to start the season, but that team looks legitimate right now. So props to Wes Unseld Jr. Zach Landia with another one says, do you do Twitter Spaces at halftime? And if so, how can people join them? Feel free to use this as an opportunity to plug the Twitter Spaces if you plan to keep doing them. Appreciate the assist on the hashtag ad for the Twitter Spaces, Zach. Yeah, I've done one at halftime, one Twitter Space, and I plan on doing more. They're not going to be every game, not even close, but I will do them from time to time, just as kind of a fun halftime thing to kill the time and talk about basketball with some fellow Blazer fans. So if you are interested in participating in that, you just need to follow me on Twitter at ToryJonesYT. There should be my handle, my Twitter handle down in the description box below. So go follow me on there, and you'll be able to join through your phone. I don't know how it works with computer just yet, but you should be able to join with your phone if you follow me whenever I go live with a Twitter Space. So if you're interested in that and talking ball with some Blazer fans at halftime, definitely check that out. Lot Go Crazy says, can the Blazers become a top 15 defense by the end of the season? If so, what's the key to reaching that goal? And the key is just coming out with intensity on the road. At home, they've been a top 15 defense. It's just doing what we do at home on the road. That's literally the only key. I think they're capable because of what they've shown at home. They just have to get locked in, as your name might suggest. They gotta get locked in and go crazy with the energy on the road, because right now they've been sleepwalking when they're not playing in Portland. So that's kind of the key to that. I think they can get top 15. They've played a lot of good offenses so far this season. They have a lot of easy games left on their schedule, at least compared to other teams, and they are showing progress in my opinion. And it was always going to take this team time to have the defense that they're running now become more instinctual and become less of them having to think of it on the fly. Dame talked about that in a previous press conference. So overall, I think this team will continue to improve throughout the season. Can they get into the top 15? I don't know, but I think they're definitely capable, and it just comes down to, can they finally figure things out on the road? Embarking Box says, what coach doesn't survive past the season? Also, who do you think takes over the Sacramento job after Walton? My bet is Stotts, with how much we switched personnel between the two teams. And honestly, my gut says that Alvin Gentry is going to be the interim head coach for the rest of the season. That's just what my gut is telling me. I don't know why. If it's an outside candidate, then Stotts is definitely possible. As far as what coach doesn't survive past the season, I don't know. There's not a lot of teams that are really underachieving right now. Maybe you look at Indiana. Things have been kind of rough there, but they just blew out the Chicago Bulls yesterday and are only 8-11. So Rick Carlisle's a new coach there too. I don't see them parting ways with him this year. It's really hard to say. I don't think there's a clear candidate for somebody who doesn't survive past the season. If I had to throw a name out there, honestly, it might surprise some people, but Frank Vogel with the Los Angeles Lakers. You look at LeBron and some of the coaches that have gotten fired when they've been coaches of him, and I feel like Frank Vogel is maybe going down the same path right now as David Blatt did. Obviously, Vogel won the championship with them a couple years ago, so he's had some success there, more success than David Blatt did in Cleveland. But with how things are going right now with the Los Angeles Lakers, even if all three guys are playing, their team looks rough. Maybe Frank Vogel is the guy who doesn't survive this season. That's kind of my dark horse candidate for that. Ethan Pettit says, who are some trade targets we could go after at the trade deadline? What could those packages look like? I will save that for Trade Talk Tuesday, where I will have more time to actually talk about this. Ethan Pettit says, even with his slump at the beginning of the year, can Dame win MVP? And I wouldn't put it past him, but with defenders being allowed to be more physical, it's harder for guards like him to have the seasons that he's had in years past. I'm not saying he's a worse player by any means. It's just going to be tougher for a guy like him. He's going to have a great last 65 games. He's going to have to break out of this shooting slump on an extended timeline soon. He's had some good games, and I don't think he's still necessarily in that slump. It's just a situation where he's going to have to put together some stretches where he's shooting 50% from three over a couple of weeks. He's had stretches like that in the past, and that's what will catapult his numbers into MVP caliber numbers. But right now, obviously you look at his stats and they don't look Damian Lillard-esque, and they're definitely not MVP worthy. The team also has to win enough games, so that remains to be seen on if they're able to do so. They got some things to figure out, so it's hard to answer this question this early in the season. Anyway, that wraps up this mailbag. Thank you for your questions. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch you tonight on the post-game stream. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.